Hello and welcome to Energizing Habits, simple strategies for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, Vicki Cleary, and I guide ambitious women just like you to find more focus, more energy, and more productivity so they can thrive, whether it's in business or in life, all by tapping into sustainable habit change around nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. Are you ready? Here we go. Hello and welcome back, my ambitious friends. I have had quite a day today. I think, yes, I did mention it last episode about how I was going through kind of a personal and professional development program called The Thread here in Wichita, Kansas. And today, after 6 months, we've wrapped up. We had our last session today. And it's been such an experience, right? And so being able to go through something like that with just this community of women and together with whom we've shared 6 months of this experience, going through, highs and lows and learning and challenges and all kinds of things. Because again, it's personal and professional growth and development. It's just honestly been so profound for me and unlike anything I've ever done. So I'm kind of just enjoying the high of, that final session today. And just a little bit of reflection about like, how much did I actually learn about myself? And now when you go through a period of learning like that, and again, this is a 6-month endeavor, when you go through something like that, learning about yourself, digging deeper, it can be overwhelming. And, learning about, and then, where do I make changes? Where do I start to shift, right? If I discovered something like, that could probably be better. We could probably change something about that so that I feel better about it. But again, when you're going through a period and learning about yourself and then trying to make changes, it can be overwhelming. But that's why I think today's episode will be impactful. So I hope you agree. Today's episode is all about making small yet impactful changes that can transform your life without overwhelming yourself. So I want to dive into why, slow and steady wins the race, right? If you've heard the tale of the tortoise and the hare, right? But especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. This is so much more true. And you know what I always say, you can transform your life without overhauling your lifestyle. And it still rings true. Now, when you're stressed out or burned out or feeling like you're running on empty, it's easy to think that, gosh, I just need to do a complete overhaul, right? I just need to tear everything apart, turn over, do all these new things. But really, that's not the answer. It seems like it might be because, if there's all these things causing stress or burnout, well, let's just change it all right away. When you're already in that stress response, making these drastic changes can actually stress you out even more. And so little secret is that it's actually not a secret at all, because as I'm going to tell you, there are actually 3 authors that I'm going to, if you haven't read their books, I'm just going to share a little bit about, but that lean into that as well. It's like, you don't have to overhaul everything at once to see real change. And in fact, in their writings, it's small things. You make small changes in order to see real change. And real change, the way that I describe it, is sustainable change, right? Stuff that you make this change and you can stay with it for the long haul. And so again, when you decide, if you were to decide to overhaul all the things, it's going to add more stress to your already overwhelmed system. And then again, that is going to cause you to, I'll say fail, but you may choose to give up. You may feel that you're not successful in the endeavor, which is why you might think you're failing. We'll also talk about, learning. Failing is learning. And so really there's never any actual failure. But when you overhaul everything in reality, you end up a lot of times just coming to a dead stop rather than continuing to make change and continuing to work towards being sustainable. So I like to think of it too as, so if you're thinking about walking on a tightrope, which who really walks on a tightrope? Very few of us. But if you were try to sprint across this tightrope, thinking if I just get through it faster, right, then I'll be done. But you will likely lose your balance. But if you take it slow and steady, one foot after another, you're more likely to make it to the other side and, make it to the other side, even with confidence. And these same principles apply to your path in reducing stress and having better health and well-being. So when you focus on small, consistent actions, like taking a few minutes each day to practice some deep breathing, add a healthy snack to your day, or even stepping outside just for some fresh air, even just a few minutes of fresh air every day, you're not just making incremental changes. You're actually giving your nervous system the support it needs to regulate and recover. And this is what's crucial when you're feeling overwhelmed. When you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, burnout, your nervous system is already, the scales, the balance has tipped. You're already in a super sympathetic state. I think that earlier when I was talking to someone, I said, you're sympathetic out. That was a weird phrase. Don't use that again. But you want to take these small points throughout the day to help bring that nervous system back into, a closer balance. It may take more time to bring it to a more full balance to more balance. But every little step towards that, every little act you do towards your parasympathetic nervous system is going to get you there. So again, we take those small steps also so that we give our nervous system the support that it needs to regulate, to recover. Now, these small steps, just stepping outside for some fresh air, a couple times a day, every day, might seem minor, right? Like a drop in the bucket or maybe even a drop in the ocean. But over time, they build up into the strong foundation of resilience and growth. And it's what helps you, once you build that foundation, it's what helps you to avoid burnout in the future and helps you to keep moving forward one step at a time. And the key there, I think, is once you're able to get out of the stress response and create more balance in your life, being able to avoid it in the future, being able to avoid burnout or that overly stressed. Now, we're always going to have stress in our life. We're always going to have these ups and downs. But when you're getting to the point of burnout, like we want to be able to manage ourselves and keep ourselves regulated to avoid that. We do not want to have to get to burnout to then start regulating ourselves. So again, it's not by doing everything at once. It's about taking these manageable actions, and every action counts, especially when you know that you're bringing these small efforts, or these small efforts are bringing you closer to feeling better. So some of it's a little bit of a mindset shift, right? It's like, if you go back to the tortoise and the hare, right? The slow and steady wins the race versus the hare who's just trying to get there fast. And, he did all kinds of things and ended up losing. And he got a little bit cocky, took a nap, different things because he thought he was so far ahead. But he was also just trying to get to the finish line at the end, but he didn't do it. So you can't just push forward, push through, right? The turtle was able to do it nice and slow. And I don't even know if he was sweating, to be honest with you. Okay. Now, to back up this approach, I mentioned that there's a few authors who have already, they have some books out that kind of back this up. They show how slow and steady wins the race, how one small step actually gets you to that sustainable change. So we're going to look at first BJ Fogg. his book is Tiny Habits. So again, if you haven't read any of these books, I'll give you a little tidbits about them. But if you're interested, you might go take a look at them. But in Tiny Habits, he shows that how starting with tiny, manageable actions can lead to big transformations. He calls it the Tiny Habits method, which emphasizes that small changes are more likely to stick and lead to significant results, right? So those tiny habits, once again. Now, another author and a book that he wrote is James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits. He also supports this idea. He explains that habits are like compound interest, right? So not simple interest. Simple interest is just, little bit. If you just did like a simple math equation, you might make $10, right? But with compound interest, it's a much different equation. And when you put in so much, you might double, you might triple, right? Depending on how long it stays in there. And that's kind of also like, how long can you stay consistent with your habits? You're compounding that interest for personal development. So even a tiny improvement each day, so kind of going back to the tiny habits method, but tiny improvement each day can lead to this progress over time. And so his approach, he likes to make habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, right? So you want to really entice yourself to be able to do the habit. And that's what can help to build those small habits and then make that big difference. And thirdly is Charles Duhigg, who wrote The Power of Habit. And he explores how habits actually work in loops, right? And so if you've got the loop, there might be a point where you make just a small adjustment to that loop, and it can change the overall routine. It can start to you can start to achieve these lasting results. So there's the three authors who their books about habits support making small changes, making small adjustments. So now, when one is going through, transformation, they're trying to change things in their life. There are a few pitfalls, and I've got 7 that you may have experienced yourself, or maybe, have some awareness so you can maybe keep from hitting these pitfalls as you're working through your own set of habit change. So the first pitfall is setting overly ambitious goals. And now I get it. You all are ambitious, right? We're all ambitious together, which is why, we jive with each other. But just like trying to overhaul your routine all at once, having a goal that's overly ambitious can cause you to be overwhelmed. It can, it can cause you to be overwhelmed, and that might actually make you give up. You might think, I can't, feel like I can't do this, right? It's too much. To avoid this, then, you would want to start with those tiny, manageable changes, just like BJ Fogg suggests in Tiny Habits, and begin with something so small that it actually is like too ridiculously easy, like a 5-minute daily habit, right? So if you've heard me talk about my morning routine, it was kind of a big deal for me to create this morning routine that I still do today. So I've been building it honestly since probably 2020. So when COVID happened and we were all staying at home, I was like, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to work on my morning routine. And then I set it up so that I would be able to maintain it like when life got back to normal, right? With whatever morning situation was going to look like. Because I didn't think we were going to be working at home forever. Some of you are great, but I did not end up working from home forever. So my routine has helped. And I started very similarly as this, right? I didn't just decide I'm going to have this 15-minute routine and I'm going to do all 15 minutes, because carving that time out of my morning, having to wake up just a little bit earlier, and it's kind of got this ripple effect through like the entire daily routine. But I started with just a 3-minute, actually, I don't even think it's 3 minutes. I usually plan 3 minutes for it, but it may or may not be 3 full minutes, but a breathing exercise. And so I started with that, and I did that, just the breathing exercise. I'd wake up, I'd, loosen my neck a little, and then I would just do my breathing exercise. And then after a couple of weeks, I layered in some stretching. So I do like 5 to 10 minutes of stretching, depending on if I'm feeling stiff or not, how much I do. And then again, I layered on another 5 minutes of walking. And so over about 6 weeks' time, I've created a 15-minute routine that I do during the week versus, but I built it over time rather than just launching into a 15-minute routine and then trying to be at peace, knowing I have 15 minutes taken out of my morning versus building it up over time, right? It was a little easier for my mind to settle into that. Another example is if you want to exercise more, if that's one of your goals, starting again with just that 5 minutes a day, and then gradually increase that time. And so you might be thinking, why would I work out for 5 minutes a day? It's, again, ridiculously small because it's meant to be easy. And so that might just be put on some sneakers and go for a walk go down to the mailbox and back. Like that's what it would be about for my house. Or, maybe it's just you're going to do some stretches, or you're going to do some squats and push-ups or something. Like whatever it is, like 5 minutes is not, it goes by really quick. And then you're like, oh, well, now I'm jazzed up. I'm ready to go. Maybe I'll do some more exercise, or cap it at the 5 and then move on to something else. But at least you're starting to do it, right? So that first pitfall was setting these overly ambitious goals, and then again using these small habits, ridiculously easy to get you started, instead of having the overly ambitious goal. So the next pitfall is having a lack of immediate results. So you're doing a thing and you're doing these 5-minute exercises and you're like, super ridiculous easy. I'm taking action, but it's taking a while to see results. This might cause you to want to give up. So you might get discouraged because you're not seeing those biceps, or, you're not losing the weight, or you're not feeling a difference in the workflow in your day or how you're feeling overall. And again, it may cause you to want to give up. So now here, going back to the Atomic Habits by James Clear, he emphasizes the importance on focusing on the process and celebrating small victories along the way. You've heard me call them tiny wins, not wings, hashtag tiny wins, right? And then coming back to the idea, you've heard it lots of times before, probably, that progress takes time, and your benefits of these small habits are going to compound, just like your IRA might, right? Like it's going to grow over time. You're going to see that over time. Sometimes if you're choosing to step on the scale, you might not see a difference for a while. But sometimes taking pictures, like you can start to see these little differences. So if your change is going to result in a physical appearance change, taking a photo can actually help you start to see a little bit better. So I did that when I was going through, I was working with a trainer and I was working through some strength training. And I, at one point, thought I might do like a competition of some kind, but I never did. However, it was really cool to be able to, I was taking pictures so I could see my progress. I was sending to my coach. And just being able to go back and see, even from one week to the next, first week to the second, like, you can actually see a little difference. But then when you take the first photo and the last photo and you put them side by side, holy cow, right? So all that work I'd been doing, and especially just looking in the mirror every day, yeah, I mean, it's just like you're seeing the same old thing every day. But when you show those before and afters, that's some powerful stuff. And so we don't always have a visual that we can compare. But that's where, if you can just come back to these tiny wins, like, how was my stress feeling today? How was my, cravings today? Or, what did I make good choices on today? Right. And then these are the benefits that will compound over time. So that's pitfall was lack of immediate results. Okay. Now the next pitfall is inconsistency due to a lack of structure. So if you are inconsistent, this could be due to a lack of structure, just like I said, but it can also be challenging, right? We are creatures of habit. We like to have these things happen in a regular way, and the inconsistency can kind of mess us up a little bit. And inconsistency can also lead to more inconsistency, I believe, right? Because it's like, well, I'm not doing it on the same days or the same times, so I forget to do it. And then because I'm not, building the habit of doing it, I'm creating consistency, then I actually lose my consistency, if that makes sense. So to stay consistent, create a simple routine and set reminders. So reminders on your phone, having sticky notes. So I have sticky notes and I have note cards. Like I have a whole bunch of things everywhere. But I also like put reminders in my phone. There's different apps that you can use for these kind of things. You can set an alarm every day, right? And just have the alarm named whatever you're trying to do, right? It's time to do 10 squats. So alarm goes off and you get up and do 10 squats, right? Whatever it is. But that routine is then what helps you to create consistency, and the consistency then starts to build on itself. So having triggers to help you remember. Now, Charles Duhigg talks about the habit loop, and that is really helpful here. So you've got a cue, what it is that triggers the routine, what it is that makes you think of doing the thing, and then the routine, which is doing the thing, and the reward. What's the benefit? What do I get from doing the thing, right? So if you, for example, want to meditate daily, integrating it into your morning routine right after brushing your teeth, right? You might have also heard this of habit stacking. So same thing, right? I did this one thing and I layered it on top, and I've created a new routine that's built on one after the other. So inconsistency due to lack of structure. The next pitfall, so this is now 4 out of 7 if you're keeping track, ignoring the importance of your environment, right? The things that are going on around you, or the things that you have access to, are going to directly impact your ability to either stay with your habit or not. So if your environment is supportive to your goals, right? And the easy example is thinking about your kitchen, right? So if you're trying to eat more healthy or trying to eat less processed foods, if you want to look at it that way, if you have processed foods in your kitchen, you are more likely to eat them. It's just the way it is, right? And so if you don't have them in your kitchen, if you don't have them readily available, then what? You're less likely to eat them. So it's what's in your environment that is causing, right? The processed food, like the potato chips that are sitting in your cupboard, you might have a stressful moment. And if you're like me and if you're feeling stressed, you got to have some crunchy, just kind of makes you feel good to crunch into something as a stress reliever. And there's lots of processed foods that are crunchy. There are lots of healthy foods that are crunchy too, but there's something about the sweet and the salty and the fat, that's in there, and they're kind of designed to help make you crave them. But when you go through this stressful moment, your brain, especially if it's something that you've been doing on a regular basis, your brain is going to cue, oh, crunchy potato chips. And then you're going to go get the crunchy potato chips because they're in the cupboard. Versus if the brain cues crunchy potato chips, but you don't have them in the cupboard, if they're not in the house, what are you going to have next? Right? Well, I've got crunchy carrots. Oh, then I'm going to have some crunchy carrots because I still get that crunch. And I didn't have to make a decision about it because the potato chips weren't even available. Right? And I'm less likely to drive to Target to get the potato chips than I am to just eat the carrots that are already in the fridge. Now, for some people, they may be willing to drive, but I'm just saying that's my reality. So having those healthy snacks available and visible, and then removing those temptations. And that goes the same for all kinds of habits, right? How can you make it easy to do the new habit, and how can you make it more challenging to do the old habit, right? So you want to make it super easy to do the new. And if you're trying to quit something, if you're like the processed food, how can you really create friction around doing that? Maybe the potato chips are wrapped up in duct tape, and so you've got to cut through and do all this stuff in order to get them. That's one way you could do it. Okay, so pitfall number 5 is trying to change too many habits at once. And this gets back to that, right? Overhauling your lifestyle. Well, that's what we're talking about, is obviously not as helpful for sustainable habit change. So when you try to change too many habits at once, it can backfire because, again, you're starting to overwhelm yourself and you might get defeated and you might quit. Or you may not see the results you're looking for because you don't have the consistency. It's too many things to try to factor in to your existing routines. So coming again around to this is focusing on one habit at a time, mastering that habit before you move on to the next. And this is what creates confidence. It's what creates momentum, right? And when you start to implement a new habit, whatever the previous habit that we were working on, you don't drop it. You stay with it, but now we're layering in yet a new one. This is how I work with my clients, actually. So we plan for a new habit every 2 weeks. So you get 2 weeks to really practice it and see how it's getting integrated, how you're doing with it. If it's still a struggle, if you're still working through it, maybe you just need another week or 2. So we'll stick with it before we layer on. But in that time, we're also assessing, right? Well, what is it that's making it a challenge, and how can we make some tweaks to make it easier to implement? But starting with just one at a time gives you that one thing that you focus on, and you can focus on it to mastery before you move on to the next. All right, pitfall number 6 is not tracking your progress, right? So, especially when you're making these small changes, not tracking your progress, it will make it so much more difficult to see what's actually happening, and could cause you again to feel defeated and want to give up. Um, Things like keeping a habit tracker or a journal. So a habit tracker, it's kind of like, if you have kids and like every time go clean up your room, and it's like a rewards chart. Clean up your room and you get a sticker. And then you get so many stickers and you get a prize, or you get to do something or whatever. It's kind of like that, right? And so every time you check a box, you get to see how consistent you are, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you're trying to fill every single box and that's how you win. It's more about seeing the pattern of your consistency, and then starting to build consistency over time. So in 1 week, you might have 3 boxes checked. Okay. So learning from it, understanding where the improvements need to happen. And then maybe the next week you got 4 or 5 boxes checked. Right. So now you've got more consistency. Maybe the next week you have 4, 5, 6 boxes checked. Right. So you're starting to see the improvement. And just by tracking how consistent you have been and seeing the consistency grow, that is one way to start to see results, like in just mental results, right? Versus any kind of a physical thing. Another thing that you can do is journaling. And I like to do something at the end of the week, right? So reflection back over, like, okay, well, what did I do this week? What did I accomplish? Where did I make good choices? What was the goal? What was the thing I was trying to work on? And then reflecting on how I did that week. And of course, you can pair that with a habit tracker as well, so that you can also have some quantitative data and not just qualitative things that you remember. Yeah, seeing where you need to make adjustments is another key part of that too. But I think I said that. So let's move on to pitfall number 7. And this may be the most important: neglecting self-compassion. Having self-compassion is so important when you're making change. It's important anyway, regardless of if you're making change, but especially when you're making change. having that compassion is what's going to allow you to, when you have setbacks, to see them as a learning process and not a real setback and not a failure. Failure to the point that you stop, right? Versus is not compassion, right? You're just like, well, I'm a failure, done, period. But failure and then learning, right? And turning it into a learning loop, that's where you start to have compassion for yourself, understanding like, yeah, well, life's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I am trying something new. And yeah, there's going to be times that I don't perform it excellently, but I'm working on it. People can be very harsh on themselves when they slip up, right? When they don't have that perfect, tracker filled out. This leads to discouragement, and again, it can lead you to abandon those new habits you're trying to implement. It can lead you to give up. But that self-compassion, and again, viewing your setbacks as a learning process, is what's going to increase your resilience. Resilience and persistence are the keys to long-term success, right? Because failure is a part of the process, whether you want it to be or not. And having self-compassion for yourself, knowing that that's going to happen, knowing that you just need to find a way to pick yourself back up and move forward from it, or trying to do so. And then having so when you get into that failure mindset, it's a lot harder to be motivated. It's a lot harder to have that drive to keep moving forward. Versus if you have that learning mindset, it's a lot easier to pick yourself back up. It's a lot easier to keep trying. And that's where the persistence comes in. So those are the 7 pitfalls that if you've gone through trying to change some habits, or maybe you've tried to overhaul your entire lifestyle at one time, these might be some things that have gotten your way. But if you are getting ready to do some personal transformation, you might keep these in mind so that you can be ready. If you're faced with some of these, you have some options on how to avoid them, mitigate them, so that you can be much more successful. It'll also make your journey a bit smoother and more rewarding. So let's make this practical. Your energizing habit for this week is to choose one small change to implement and make it ridiculously simple, like laughably easy, okay? 5 minutes or less, doing something, maybe it's some morning breathing, maybe it's adding a piece of fruit to one meal, or a vegetable to one meal, right? Like I said, keep it silly, easy, ridiculously easy. And try to create consistency as you do it. It is so easy that it's easy to do every day, right? I can pause and take 10 breaths in my day, and I could do that every day. I could do it multiple times a day, even. Like that's how easy it should be, right? Whatever you choose, work towards creating some consistency around it, and you will be amazed at the difference that it will make. All right. Now, if you feel like you need support in making some small, sustainable changes, impactful changes in your lifestyle, in managing stress, especially learning how to balance that stress and then have more energy, I encourage you to check out my Energy to Thrive project, and feel free to email me, right? It's Vicky at Uplift Healthy Lifestyle to learn more. And if you are doing that energizing habit, if you are trying something this week, I would love to hear how it goes for you. I would love to hear your wins. Share with me your struggles. I want to know. I want to know what you're going through. I want to know how implementing small habits, making small changes, is it creating a big impact for you? So the easiest way to do that is to screenshot the episode and then share it on Instagram in your stories, and then tag me at Uplift Healthy Lifestyle. And that way I can see, you can put a little message in there about what you're working on. And then I can cheer you on. and I get to see what's resonating with you all. All right. So I will say one more time. You can transform your life without overhauling your lifestyle. And it all starts with small changes. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you today. Have an energized day.